Forestry meeting. That was very well done, very well received. And I know a couple of the Board of Forestry members came up to Kate McMichaels and a couple of us to thank us for all the work you guys have been doing on the committee. So I know they appreciate it. So I want to say I appreciate it too. Thanks for everybody showing up for that, helping out. I want to start off with something around fire season too. I just want people to be aware of it. We have stewardship foresters and SFOs out in the districts, and we have a bad habit of giving you our direct line to our cell phones and not telling you what our office numbers are most of the time. So when we disappear on fires, some people are trying to get a hold of their specific stewardship forester, and they may not realize that they're out on a fire. So if you are hearing that from landowners that they can't get a hold of ODF, have them forward them to the office directly, that line there, and they'll get you in touch with the person who's probably most likely taken over for that stewardship forester or SFO forester that took off for a fire. So you should always be able to get a hold of ODF. If it's not with their cell phone, try the office line. They'll get you in touch with somebody. So I just want to make sure that people understood that. I want to talk a little bit about kind of a fire season update, at least from what I've heard so far. We were just talking about the rain coming in, which is going to help with some of those large fires. I know some of them don't have a line. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't know for sure, but they're trying to secure the fires, get them in place. I know Team 3 that was on that southern fire. The name is escaping me, down by Medford Roseburg. They either came back yesterday or today. They'll be traveling back. They gave the fire back to the district earlier this week. So that's a good thing. Get some folks back in, rested up. And then hopefully fire season like Mauricio is hoping for is hopefully on its way out here if we can get some more of this rain. Some of the fire, and then we're rotating some folks back in and out on time off. See, as far as I know, that should hopefully, we still have fire updates coming every week, and we're talking about that. But the piece I want to talk about now is the Office of Emergency Management is switching over to fire recovery now versus fire from emergency to recovery. So what they're doing, so if you can't get a hold of me right away, I'm being pulled into these meetings with the Office of Emergency Management to talk about recovery functions, since I believe Eastern Oregon is, last I checked, the acreage on there was upwards of like 300,000 acres burned in Eastern Oregon. Not all of that's forest land. I think a large majority of it's rangeland. And I know landowners, especially ranchers, are getting antsy to go put fences back up, get grass seed out and everything, but we have to do the assessment, sort out the forest land from the ag land, so that the Department of Ag can go do what they need to get done, NRCS can do what they need to get done, and ODF need to do what they need to get done. We're having a coordination meeting next Tuesday to kind of sort out, get our assessment team out, ODF's assessment team out, to go and start assessing some of these fires. We got a plan in place. We just need to get everybody on the same page and then take off and go. So you might start seeing some of these folks out there on the burn on these fire areas, trying to do some assessments on what was burned, whether or not the landowners are going to salvage log, and then seedling needs is the last piece that'll come in after that. Quick piece on salvage logging. Just want to touch on it. There's no change to the salvage logging rules, so old rules still applies, is my understanding. Again, I've told Department of Agriculture, DEQ, several of the other agencies that if a landowner is going to cut a tree and haul it off, they need to get a hold of ODF. If they're going to cut a tree, regardless, they should be contacting ODF and getting in touch with us before they do anything, just to cover all their bases, even in Eastern Oregon. So before you start harvesting, make sure you go through the proper channels to get a hold of ODF. Let's see. So the fire recovery efforts. So the biggest one we have that we work with the Farm Service Agency and the Forest Service. Some people call it EFRP is the acronym. It's the Emergency Forest Restoration Program. We utilize this program, both us and FSA, during fires, during windstorms, during ice storms. It's a popular program to get landowners back on their feet. It's a cost share program, so the landowner pays for it up front, and then the Farm Service Agency pays back 75% of the costs of the recovery efforts, including seedling needs, and I believe, I think it's the initial kind of cleanup of the land. Lori Bell is our manager who's in charge of that program. She'll be working with our team for the assessments, and then she'll be rolling out that EFRP program, both to Western Oregon, kind of southwest area where the fires were, and to Eastern Oregon. Let's see, keeping on with the recovery piece, I've been talking to our seed orchard, which a lot of you have now gone out and talked to. You met Don Kasmerick out there and Casera. The two of them are using the seed bank to try and procure seed. They have plenty of seed for Western Oregon for pine and Doug fir and hemlock and cedar. What they're trying to work on is buying surplus seed for Eastern Oregon where these fires are. So if landowners do want to replant pine, they should be able to get some of this seed in place for those landowners over there. Working with the Forest Service, they had some additional funding we could utilize to purchase seed. So I think we'll be set here probably in a couple months, definitely by the end of the year, having some seed available for landowners over there. And then the last thing I had was the Yes Fish program. I handed out some of the flyers at the Oswald meeting yesterday. The projects that we're going forward with have been announced, I believe. Josh Henson announced those. And he sent out the letters, the congratulations letters to those landowners, and he is now getting those in place, those letters. And I believe on our website, there's a map of where those projects are if people are interested in those. So it's kind of nice to see a program that you've been working on for the last year and a half and finally up and going and moving forward. So, and that's all I have right now, Lindy, unless there's questions.
Any questions for Mike? Rick.
Yeah, quick question. I may have missed this, Mike, yesterday. I got an email from somebody yesterday or late last night about our meeting yesterday. I was probably setting up lunch and I didn't hear it. There was a question about reforestation rules. Did you hear that, or did that go to you?
I don't know. You don't remember specifically what they were asking, Rick, or?
No. I'll follow up with you after.
Okay. Yeah. So one question that did come up, Rick, was a question about there was a deadline around doing streams. Let me make sure I get it right here.
Yes.
The stream, it's not the fish surveys, it's the, I'm blanking on it. What was it? What were we talking about, Rick? I'm trying to remember the stream. I should have wrote it down. Perenniality surveys. Sorry, there we go. There is no timeline or deadline on that, which is the question that was yesterday. I confirmed that with Thomas Whittington today.
Okay.
So he said it'd probably be better for landowners to get that done sooner rather than later, but there was no definitive deadline on that. So
okay.
So I know Gordon wanted to know that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for that. I just note for the roll call that Keola has joined. Hi, Keola. I think that does it for our item of Mike's update. So the next thing we have to discuss is the position that Eric Kranzush left. The vacant. Do people have suggestions and possibilities for that?
Is that position geographically independent? It could be anywhere in the state, or?
It appears to me, yes.
I believe so, yeah, based on the information. It just has to be somebody like actually in the industry.
Okay. I can reach out to a couple of folks and see if they're interested.
They were talking to folks who are currently employed by an industrial company or retired, or I'm just thinking about Green Diamond, so I wonder if you are also reaching out to them.
Does anybody have a connection to Green Diamond? I know you do, Keola, but...
Yeah, I'm happy to if that's helpful, but that's why I was asking Dave if he's got a little more he could share about who he's talking to.
For me, it's just our local mill, Interfor, down there in Malala. There's a guy that's really involved in a lot of different things, and So I thought I could give him a call.
Oh, that'd be great. Let's, I think, start there. That sounds good.
Those sound like good possibilities. It might be good to reach out to Eric. I can do that and just because he had said he would think about it as well, so I can send him an email asking him that.
And do we want to have a timeline of when to get names presented, Wendy, or I guess we have till next year to put them in place, but I don't know if they want to join earlier than that. I guess
I would say we should go ahead as soon as possible, and we did last year. We had a couple times in recent few years we've had people join in the middle of a term, which I see no point in waiting if we can find someone who's good and up to doing it sooner.
And are there particular parameters of what sort of company in the industry, or, I mean, what are there rules on that one? Yeah.
I'm looking at the charter for CFF and it just says one forest industry representative. It doesn't describe who they are. So I guess you can interpret that however you want, Kate. So
Okay.
I would assume working for maybe one of the larger companies.
I mean, I know a couple of people at like SPI. I could actually ask, and yeah, if they have suggestions too.
Yeah.
Although Dave's Interfor person could be good, so.
Okay.
And this is Maurizio. I just visited a very special meal operation in Wallowa, the Wallowa Mill Heartwood Biomass that produces 7 different products, and actually they're opening a sister mill in Northern California, a brand new facility that's been so successful. So David is the guy, has been the guy behind it. Schmidt, because they're running such a unique small diameter operation that basically is 100% salvage with 7 different products that span from biochar to small diameter logs to firewood to log straw, forest straw. It would be a great thing to provide an alternative. I can reach out to him. He's a super busy guy, but I will reach out to him and ask him if he would consider doing that. I was there last Thursday.
Okay.
That sounds extremely interesting. And as we're talking about possible topics for upcoming presentations, it would be really interesting to hear more about that mill.
Yeah, and maybe we need to encourage a visit because I was surprised. I thought they had 3 products, and now they have 7. So, which and I'm going to put the name in the chat so it can be capturing those.
Okay, I think we have our to-do list in terms of making some contacts and looking for someone to fill that industry position. Thank you. And next is Mike again on the S-Fish one-pager discussion.
Yeah, and I just realized I left all my one-pagers at the Oslo meeting, but I guess the topic that keeps coming up with the S-Fish program, at least from when I'm talking to Josh Hansen about it, is the around the tax piece with the projects themselves. And so I know Josh has been talking to several folks in the industry. Clint Benson is one of those about what's going on with this with the taxes. And I guess the best advice, and he put it on that one pager. I'll have to see if we can find that and send it out. Is that to get in touch with your tax preparer to kind of talk with them before, if you're interested in the program, maybe talk to them about it before you go for the program, or even as you're applying for the program, just to see what it's how it's going to affect you, because it is considered, I believe, income in the state of Oregon. I'm not a tax expert, so I don't want to go into it too much on the tax side of it. What Josh did find out is that I think he thinks you could get it. The way he's understanding it is it can be covered under Oregon law underneath a different tax code that's within Oregon. That was what he's kind of discovered. But again, talk to your tax consultant about it. I think where the hangup is coming with it is the federal income tax, and that's a piece we may I think he's starting to look into to see how that's affecting that program. That's something I don't know if the state can do anything about, because I think they consider it some type of income or something on your federal tax, on your federal taxes. We haven't gotten around that piece yet, and I know Josh is still working on it. But in the meantime, he did put together the one pager. So if you have folks who are interested in the program, but have questions, there is a one pager that's out there. I think it's on our website actually, and they give it out to the landowners. I know Josh is working very hard trying to go out and visit all these projects and get them up and going. He's up against the timeline of, I think, in water work period is coming up here now that we're getting rain. It might start getting up against some of these S-fish programs. So that's all I really want to say about it, Wendy, is that he is working on the tax piece of it, but there's still questions around it. Get a hold of your tax preparer and see what they say about it. And then if nothing else, you can always get a hold of Josh Hansen as well and talk to him about it, because I know he's constantly talking to people, trying to find solutions for it. So that's all I have.
I thank you. I think we did, when he spoke to us, which was helpful, he did bring a one pager, which I thought might be similar to one that is currently being used. And my reservation about it is that clearly the department doesn't want to be giving tax advice. But in developing a program, if you sort of raise the alarm about the grants being income, it makes it sound like that's sort of the default problem position.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that there are often ways in which grants can be received, and either there will be a corresponding and immediate deduction that makes it a wash in terms of whether it's income or not. And so it strikes me that becoming overly alarmed about this being a real tax problem and alerting people about it might have a chilling effect on the program that would be unfortunate. So just by saying this is a problem that might arise, you need to contact your tax professional up ahead, people are thinking, oh, I'm going to be paying someone and I just don't want to do this program because of that hurdle. So I'm a little concerned about something that I haven't been convinced this is actually an actual problem. And so I don't know where quite the right place to land is, but I would just say to a certain extent, raising the alarm might be chilling for the program if you're not really sure that this is a problem, because so many grant programs people aren't finding that the grant is income or, as I said, has a corresponding deduction. Dave?
Yeah, I'm not a tax expert either, but I've received quite a few grants directly. Of course, I also receive them through our Soil and Water Conservation District or Basin Council, so they're the gatekeeper and they take care of that. But I've also received grants directly from the Oregon Wildlife Foundation, Portland General Electric, and have never had an issue with this tax business. I mean, because it's income coming in that I'm then dispersing to contractors. And so it's a zero sum, and that's how our accountant has looked at it always.
Okay.
It would be good to have, go ahead, Kate.
I was just thinking, I see your point on not raising it as an alarm, but since there are so many programs out there and some of them, because like a cost share program is taxable. So if people are trying to get all sorts of different aid, different places, just knowing, even just that advice to talk to your tax preparer could actually allay concerns rather than stir more of them up. Just so, oh, this is different from, say, EFRP or something. So, because you don't want people surprised at that. I think that was part of the concern too. Although these are such huge projects, there's so many pieces that go into it. Maybe people are far more savvy about it than little folks like us, who were kind of like confused by all of it. So,
and if there's something about how the program is set up that makes it more likely to be taxed than other programs, then I think it would be worth thinking about how to make a change so that it is not more likely to be considered taxable income than other grant programs. So it'll be good to have updates on this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I could talk to Josh afterwards.
Mm-hmm. We're moving very quickly through our agenda, and I see that our next thing is the Protection Division update from Ron. Is he on the call yet or on the Zoom?
He is not. He said he will be here by 9:45.
By 9:45? I didn't hear quite what you said.
Yeah, 9:45.
Okay. Let's see. Looking at our further well, we have 15 minutes now. We don't definitely we could start talking about topics if people want to do that. I think the way the meeting's going, we might be able to get this done in a faster way, maybe by lunch or something like that. So do you want to talk about the upcoming meeting schedule and topics right now? I propose that we do.
Suppose we could.
We have I have sort of a bullet list that I created, and then Dave presented essentially a really good list of proposed topics. Let's go. Maybe people can just say, let's just let people right now just have a free conversation about what people want to hear about, and then if we'll see what comes up, and then at the end I'll see if there are topics that haven't been mentioned that are on my list. How about doing it that way? So I'd say topics people would like to see as presentations or discussions or activities in the upcoming year.
This is Maurizio. I would like to propose to hear more about value-added forestry. Any example that we may have where normal products that were, and again, the biomass, the hardwood biomass in Wallowa is an example for me because I just came fresh from that visit. I knew it did exist, but I knew it up 7 or 8 years ago, and they made a lot of projects. So there are examples right there, and they actually are being duplicated. They're building a brand new facility in Northern California, mimicking the one that we have in Wallowa, which is super cool because this kind of things don't usually happen. And these are small logs or burnt logs that really are processed in 7 different products. So examples, tangible examples of how our forest can continue to provide jobs and products for the communities that are not the traditional large scale sawmills that we have seen or we know of the present. Which is super cool. I mean, if you want a Roseburg Lumber Company, you want to visit that 2 billion board feet, 2 billion board feet every year with 2 plants going 24/7. It is super cool to see the large scale, but we also need these alternatives. So that kind of a value-added forestry in any shape or sort.
Keola?
Thanks, Wendy. I wonder if we might want to focus some on the loss of small forest owner land, which is, I think the latest stat was that 12% of the property or the forest land in Oregon is owned by small forest owners. And I swear 10 years ago it was 24%. I could be wrong, but it feels like there is a rapid decline of small forest owner lands. And I don't know if that's because of conversion or if maybe some companies are reacquiring small forest properties, but it feels like that acknowledging that loss and thinking about strategies to maintain it would be, it's a big topic. But Kate, you're looking confused. Do I have stats wrong? Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
I didn't know there'd been that big a
And I could
change
be
in
wrong.
proportions.
I just feel like I've been, I was trying to go back to my old OFRI, the little manuals and I did feel like it used to be higher than it is. And I could be totally off on the magnitude of loss, but I know it is a constant, pressure for whether it's generational transfer or conversion or, more development. And it feels like we could be a little more proactive in thinking about how to keep the small forest owners.
Others?
seeing.
I'll follow up on that, and I would like to see some presentations addressing the small forest landowner and what their liability may be. Their responsibility is after a fire damages their properties, to put information in front of them that they have the obligation to the Oregon Forest Practice Code, making sure that's understood and what it is, whether it's reforestation or habitat restoration or what, as well as any of the systems by which they can be provided funding to assist them in their projects. Having a program that would overall lap that from the damage to the restoration process and how that expense can be covered to assist the small landowner.
A good topic, especially in connection with the SFO office.
Yep, I think that'd be an easy, well, I should say easy, but that'd be a doable one probably in the near future. I know Katie was working on some of this, so.
Thanks, Mike. That's good to know.
Ricks.
I'm sorry, I was taking notes. Rick?
Yeah, thanks. Now that things are rolling, I would like to hear at some point, probably sooner rather than later, and maybe we can do this as a meeting, is how the SFO and ODF is coordinating with OFRI and Extension and the Partnership for Forestry Education to communicate not only to active folks involved in those programs, but that larger audience. I'm a little concerned that we're not coordinating enough, and folks are looking to the SFO and ODF, I think, for a little bit more leadership on this, and that's something I think that this committee can certainly push on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Dave?
To follow up on what Gary was saying, perhaps a corollary to that would be updates on the development of the post-disturbance harvest rules pertaining to SFOs. Those can have a big impact on what can happen, to one's property and what one can do following a conflagration. So that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was thinking too, just follow up on what Rick was saying. That was one of my points in my letter that I sent, and we talked about that last night at our local Clackamas County Farm Forestry Association meeting about how, and this relates to what Kayla was saying. I mean, I don't know the statistics either. I don't think they're quite as the 50% decline, but nonetheless, there is a decline, I think, in ownerships, and there's a consequent decline in our membership. And so we just need to figure out how to get people to recognize the importance of holding onto their forest land, and then also getting people to become more involved in the local organizations that support them in their efforts. So.
Kate?
I don't know if this could be the right place or one of the places. I know that there's been some concerning statistics that came, I think it was a compliance monitoring report that came out about how many smaller forest landowners are or are not complying with reforestation requirements post-harvest or other things. And I think unpacking it seemed to be, I mean, I automatically have questions about what's behind all of that? Is it literally people not knowing the rules, not following the rules, or is it some of the reforestation struggles people are having? which would then count as, oh, you haven't followed the rules, even, if you don't have free to grow trees, but say you've tried replanting. So I think there are all sorts of things to unpack in that. And this might be one of the part of it keeps going back to how many people know the responsibilities. There are fewer ownerships, but then there are also new people coming in to buying small forest lands who may not know what some of those rules are. And then that connects to that communication piece. So it kind of ties all of them together.
In terms of presentation, that might be able to be linked in with what Gary was talking about as well, in terms of thinking of
Possibly.
presentation that might be able to be expanded to include that as well.
It could be, it may end up being two different topics, I think, maybe. One's compliant, but anyway, yeah, we can take a look at it.
I'll add another topic here, and it's something I'm seeing on the valley side over here. As we, as a society, address the housing issues and home costs and basically the shortage that we have of it, I'm knowing in the South Valley here in the Eugene area, there's more discussion coming up on the urban growth boundaries. And in our valley floor, if you go west or east, you're in the forest lands pretty quickly. And I'm just curious as to whether or not with expansion of urban growth boundaries, will it have an impact on our forest structures and lands in those regions or zones?
Yes, I think so. I believe so.
Well, does it take it out of having to comply with the forest accord, or I look at it just in Eugene area, seeing they've been moving land boundaries here this last year. And looking at those areas, I see the transition of the oak savanna to the conifer forest. And I have a question mark. Is there issues when you convert that land to be developed into residential? And then is it residential, it's, the one lot homestead, or is it, multiple complex apartments?
I'm giving a moment for people to raise their hand, and then I'll take a look at the list that we have.
This is Maurizio. One more thing that I think should be on the horizon, it continues to be the infrastructure of our stewardship for the forest. We have seen the closure of several small sawmills last year, and the latest one in Eastern Oregon is in Grant County, Mallard Lumber Company, 76 jobs, which doesn't seem like much. Anyway, so if the infrastructure for stewardship does not exist, the techniques for taking care of the project and the incentive to be an owner of the small, they're really challenged. So so how do we address that? I have no idea, but silence may not be a good strategy. So at least by talking about it, we may be exploring some goofy potentials, but it is tangible, it is here, and it's happening, and it is not getting any better. And I like to follow up on what you said about the acronym, like PFA, SFO, and other things that we're using here mean absolutely zero to my next door neighbors or to the people that I talk about in 10 different counties in Oregon. Unless you're part of this, that language has not trickled down to everyday owners or users yet. So I guess the question is, we're going back to what is the plan for a big campaign? I mean, one day of airplane flies can provide a lot of money to do outreach to communities, radios and stuff and whatnot. We really need to be intentionally reaching out and informing and engaging new generations. Rick, I'm talking to you. I was talking about our Oswa yesterday, and we have a bold plan to reach 100 members. But and with visits and tours and whatnot, but It's a bold plan. I mean, I said the organization that groups us at the private level is the OSWA organization, and maybe we need to come up with something like the Cattle Association had, assessing $1.5 every time that we sell a cow. I mean, I used to be a rancher. We used to do that. But can we come up with some plans that really engages also in the growth of the organization that represent the typology of the people we are talking about?
I can't find my reaction button, Maurizio, but I would give you a thumbs up or a clap. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, thanks, Mauricio. That's really good. And Paul Harlan gave a great report yesterday on activities out there, and the music gathering sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're going to have a band.
One of the things that OFRI has been talking about is what are we all doing to reach the unengaged folks that may own land, neighbors, relatives, but that aren't plugged in, whether they're in OSWA or involved in extension programs, or just even, connected with their SFO or service forester. So that may be a topic, Wendy. It's sort of more than a communication thing. It's sort of what's the strategy, and we're not talking about something that hasn't been done or tried, before, but using electronic communication and social media is probably part of that. And then as land continues to turn over, they may not even know, just like we talked about the rules. They may not even know, what district they're in, let alone all the acronyms. So going back to the beginning and kind of, the school year starts over and we all teach reading again.
Or long division in my case. Okay, other brainstorm thoughts on topics? Since we're just about to have our next actual formal agenda item, Ron Graham, we can jump back into this discussion and go through the list when rather than starting the list now. I think we can go ahead with Ron.
Or it's Tim actually coming in.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Mhm.
am I up a little early?
Nope, you're perfect. Right on time.
Okay, thanks everyone, and we'll turn it over to Tim.
Awesome. So Heather's has my presentation here, and we hitting on a few things. Appreciate the opportunity to chat with you all. I saw it's a protection program update, and with that, I'll be starting with fire season. So we'll give a flash through of what's been a very active fire season. So with that, I'll wait until I get a couple pictures up because it tells a story pretty well. I'll put Heather on the spot, and then I'll touch on a few administrative rule updates we had from the last Board of Forestry meetings as well. Okay. So one thing, we got a lot of great pictures from this year as with a lot of people deployed. So that's been helpful with changing some up in the slide deck a little bit. Go to the next slide. So what feels like forever ago.
Introduce yourself, maybe, Tim.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
So my name is Tim Holzbach. I serve as the Deputy Chief of Policy and Planning for the Protection Division. Apologies for just jumping right in there. With that, I'm Ron's counterpart on the policy half. So Ron's with operations. He's over in Fossil right now. And so I'm pinch hitting for him, but we usually sub in for each other this time of year. So appreciate the chance to talk with the group. But what feels like forever ago, we were actually talking about a reasonably average fire season, believe it or not, as we got into the spring. Coming out of the spring with some wet weather, we finally got out of just barely got out of most of the drought status around the state. as you see in the lower left. And we're looking pretty good in there with not a big red block on Oregon for July for the first significant fire, and then that's changed fairly quickly. And then in early July, we got hit with about a 110-degree heat wave, and that dried everything up. And then we hit 2 weeks later, we had lightning, and then we're off to the races for the summer. So with July, we had fuels in the 97th percentile of the energy release component for largely a month solid before there was any measurable precipitation around that between and anything that was ignited by lightning, or lightning found very receptive fuels for the start and spread of fires. And that's what we found throughout most of July into August, and some significant fuel beds in the eastern side of the state with some of the sustained grasses and brush that's been growing over there for a couple of years sustainably. So we start off, telling was having our first large fire over in June. On the 20th, we had 1,100 acres, started off the Upper Applegate fire in Southern Oregon. That kind of started off for the year. Usually our first large fire team deployments in July. So that was telling that what we had as expectations for the beginning of the year was quickly changed, almost turned on a dime for that, just with that weather event that just pulled us over to significant dryness and receptive fuels. That was followed shortly after. You see the dates on these fires are only a couple days apart, and you'll see a series through them. We had 3,900 acres over in the Darlene 3 fire. That was over in the Pine area. That was a significant unified command between BLM and the fire marshal's first deployment for the year for that fire. Salt Creek, we're back over on Southern Oregon, and with our ODF team deployment for that one for 1,500 acres. We finally getting into July. We made it through the 4th of July weekend. We generally do fairly well considering how receptive and folks have a lot of fears of fireworks starting fires. That's probably the one weekend where we have the least number of human caused fires just because of the consciousness of what people are doing. But we made it through the weekend. We got to the 7th, and then Salt Creek was next up. And then went from the 7th to the 9th over to the north central Oregon area with Larch Creek, another unified command impacting Ty Valley at up 16,000 acres for that fire. And then the most complex one of July is what ended up being turned into the Battle Mountain complex. This is the first fire that ODFs needed to deploy 2 incident management teams to the same fire due to this complexity. It started off as this area had received 6 lightning strikes. Those strikes caused 4 fires. And the two of those fires were caught at 102 acres and 96 acres. The John Day unit has had a very active year, and they've been extremely successful with all the tough country that they fight fire in. But then this complex was a mix of quite a few fires that ended up burning together. And then the complexity of them, we had Team 3 with McCarty on the east side of that fire, what was originally Battle Mountain, and then we had the Team 1 with Hessel on Boneyard and Court Rock on the west side, and then those fires end up merging. So they were working together, both teams, to manage that significant section of geography there and across multiple counties. With that, at that point in time, we had all 3 of our incident management teams on the ground and deployed. We had that same lightning event caused some fires in the Cascades. We brought in some of our partners in North Carolina to help us manage those incidents, and that's going to be a theme throughout this. We have had a couple good years of exporting resources, and this year Oregon really needed the resources, and the relationships we built over the last few years helping out our partner states have really provided dividends for this year here. So we had North Carolina over there. Those sustained Cascade fires do take a lot of effort. We deployed team 1 back down there again to help manage those fires, and I believe they're still under a management team currently. Accessibility and just tough terrain to fight fire in. Winding Waters was a quick success. Few fires, lightning caused fires on ODF protection. I believe all 5 of them were just get a team around them, get them off the landscape. That turned into the priorities. As we had resource strains of new fires, we had to get them taken care of immediately. We couldn't have more large fires on the landscape throughout the year. Once they get embedded, then they just absorb too many resources. So initial attack, extended attack, and then hitting fires extremely hard to get them mopped up quickly. A little picture on the right there is our aviation manager and his son who was up there. So a lot of generational connections on in the wildfire community. But great to see her fire is family. Her family is fired whichever way you go around at ODF. So it's good to see them out there. Next slide. Back to the west side. Dixon was another one that came up. This was in Douglas County. And this was a quick, team 2 has had a significant run of really getting their hands around fires and getting home before their 14 days times out. I think they're in the lead right now between our teams of not having full deployments. Mr. Howard and his group is doing great work. So this one was caught at 1,900 acres, burned in some of the areas around the Stouts Creek fire from 2017. I believe it's 2017, 2018. So some of that challenging country there. So a lot of potential to grow, but this one, they got their arms around it and got it mopped up and turned back to their district in fairly short order. Labor Day weekend, again, was a fairly active weekend as it has been over the last few years. We had 2 deployments, one at the Copperfield fire over in Klamath and to the Shoe Fly fire over in the John Day, Wheeler, Grant County, Wheeler County area. So those are 2 of them. Copperfield had team 2 on it as well that had team 3 on it. They're returning today, or yesterday was their final day. They should be headed back. And that one's been mopped up and turned back over to the local district at 3,200 acres. Shoe Flies at currently at it was at 3,000 acres as of this slide, which was prepared last week. I know that fire is growing up quite a bit since then, but Hessel's team will probably have a full 14 days on that fire before it's turned over to the district. So right now, teams are being conscious about when fires are turned back over to the local jurisdictions, just because of making sure we have our suppression repair taken care of, and folks are in the local district. Folks have been has been doing pretty well at keeping fires small and off the landscape, but it's getting to, we're about the time of year we're starting to wear on some folks on sustained effort and that type of stuff. So we're going to probably utilize our extra capacity and horsepower with some of our incident management teams and partners to the maximum extent we can. So those are some of the big ones. Some of the successes we've had have been, those are the fires that stay out of the news. And these are the ones that probably should get more attention as we go through the fire season. And but trying to highlight some of them. Successful initial attack is the cornerstone of ODF's fire program, being safe and aggressive of keeping fires off the landscape. So the Silver Falls fire was in West Oregon. We utilized our severity resources and our fire bosses in that fire. It was near body of water, so we could utilize those scooper aircraft to get water on it aggressively and as fast as possible. That was a great catch in a high visibility area of the Portland media market. The Parish Creek complex was 2 fires. They were caught at 99 acres and 102 acres. So it was about 2 miles between the 2 fires, but it took 4 hours to drive from one to the other. The country, the challenging areas and accessibility of these fires has been, they've been finding homes in areas that have been really, really tough to get to. And that was just outside of Spray for those 2. So another great catches. We had a strike team in from Alaska, and some of our severity helicopters and aircraft help with those as well. So some of our partners really getting after it and helping us be successful. The Lee Falls fire over in Forest Grove, we utilized some drones for mapping and aerial imagery. So we could get real-time data into the system to make fire management decisions on those. And Lee Falls Fire was really right adjacent to, I believe it's Cherry Hill is the community over there. And that one was caught and worked really closely with the Gaston Fire Department on suppressing that fire and protecting homes. So some really great catches this year for that. Didn't need team deployments. Hard work from firefighters kept them off the landscape as soon as possible, and we could move on to the next one. So, as you know, we got a little bit of rain in the forecast. He's probably seen, and some of parts of the state is still a little cloudy even in Salem today. But getting a little bit of moisture into the system, it helps move some of the fire restrictions down and lower some of the fire danger, but it's not a season-ending event at this point. You'll see some of the press releases about fire danger going down. I believe even in Southwest Oregon, they moved from extreme to high yesterday with some of the moisture, trying to respond to we try to keep the fire restrictions as close to reality as we can with the weather to still prevent fire, but allow people to do what they need to do around their properties in a safe manner. You see some of that. We got some of the moisture tallies from that first wave of moisture throughout the west side of the Cascades. The east side was a little drier. There's been some moisture over there over the last few days, so some of those zeros have turned into some positive numbers, but it's been a little bit scant. And then kind of here's the busy map. So this is as of August 30th. All the little dots on there are fires. So whether they're blue or black, or some of the red ones are the ones that are still burning. But we had 10 fires that were close enough and to potential damage that they were FEMA eligible. I believe that's actually 11 now as of this. So, but it's been a very active year. So 5 fires over 100,000 acres as of the 30th. That I believe has also changed. And we're at 1.5 million acres burned, largely on the east side of the state, which we haven't seen the east side of the state burn significantly since about 2012, I believe was when we had a couple 100,000 acres of that range area go. And as of September 3rd, we're at 94% still of fires kept at 10 acres or less. So that 10 acres or less number is the key performance measure of the fire protection program designated by the legislature. Our goal is 98%. So we're a little low on that for this year, but 94% right now. We've had 744 fires to date and 216,000 acres of ODF protection that's been impacted by wildfire. So higher than our 10-year averages. We're actually lower in our fire count than we normally are this time of year. Usually we have about 1,000 fires on ODF protected lands. And statewide, we have about 2,000. So ODF has about half of the fire load across the state. Our federal partners have the other half. And about of that 150 or 1.5 million acres, there's 216,000 on ODF protected lands. The remainder is with our federal partners. So got to highlight the folks who came to help us are monumental in this. We assist sending folks to Texas, New Mexico, Alaska, Canada throughout the springtime. And as soon as we needed help, they turned around and came and helped us. We had almost 500 people imported across 22 states. We had a slew of Canadian resources that were assisting us from a whole pile of provinces. The National Guard had 152 people deployed for ground forces as well as aviation assets. And Southwest, Saskatchewan sent 2 folks, Northwest Territories. They had a long travel to get over here, but they were definitely instrumental in helping us with logistics and planning and some of those other critical portions where our folks are dealing with operations and again, fighting fire. But a lot of engines in here, a lot of overhead, a lot of assistance with assisting or with bringing folks in, and even an entire incident management team between Florida and North Carolina to help assist with some of those Cascade fires. So the Guard had we're over on the Falls and Telephone Fire, so they had a good time there. The partnership with the National Guard between whether it's ground resources or aircraft is just phenomenal. And the medevac ships were on for 60 days this year, which is a significant period of time for us to have accessibility to those aircraft. So we had almost 10,000 firefighters in Oregon for weeks at a time, which is a large number of sustained exposure. And so having those evac ships available in case they're needed is just significant comfort for folks if we need to extract someone for any events. And also their helicopters, we're helping out with fires and keeping this fire on some of those extended attack fires, helping out the teams and getting water where we needed to. Our severity aircraft, we really drive through that tool. We've utilized them significantly and keep moving around. There's areas where we couldn't fly them with smoke. We'd move them to another area or plan ahead where they might have flight impacts and make sure we keep as much use as possible. They're our number one tool in holding fires until we can get people to them in some of this remote terrain that we're fighting fire in, especially this year. And then our multi-mission aircraft with the Partnavia that aircraft's been retrofit through an investment from the Oregon Forestland Protection Fund a few years ago. This year it picked up 22 fire detections over its 50 hours, but its IR capabilities and cameras feed right into live streaming so that fire managers on the ground can see fire perimeters. They can spot new starts. We pair that with our detection camera network to after lightning storms and can get firefighters to fires either that night or early the next morning to start initial attack on some of these lightning events that we've had impacting us this summer. So a couple of highlights of just recap. Our 2024 column is back up as far as acres burned. So that one is spiking back up there. It's still below 2021 and 2022 or 2020, but it's still a significant impact. So we've had 47% of the fire statewide, but we've only burned 13% of the statewide acres to date. And we're right at that 94%. You can see some of those other years, 2023, 2021, 2017, 2013, some of those years were, those are heavier lightning years. And what some of that does to our fire suppression effectiveness over time. Again, some of our acres by decade, this 2020s are starting to creep up there again with some significant shifts. But it's consistent on ODF protected lands, similar, consistent across jurisdictions. If you look at the statewide view, kind of that same plateaued tiers where it just increases over each decade. Large fire costs were, I think that where that 61 net is probably around 75 right now with some of the last reports. So it did these last couple fires that started on ODF protection has had some fiscal impact to the state. And then our 10-year average is about 75 million gross still, $33 million as a net impact. So this one's a little bit of a boost here. Safety, however, we've been doing fairly well in 2024. You can see that pink column, which is the one on the right of each of the months. We had a spike in June, but we've kept pretty low, knock on wood, with the reduction of safety incidents for how many exposure hours we've had for this year and how active it's been. Our safety record has been pretty phenomenal. And even below 2020, this is the lowest year of safety issues in the last 5 years, actually, for firefighter safety, which is pretty remarkable. So looking at it was going to get a little dry. Now it's starting to shift a little bit, starting to get into a little bit wetter. You can see in October and November, we definitely drop out of significant fire potential, but got a little bit of exceptional rain coming in over the next couple of weeks. So we're looking forward to seeing how that materializes and what parts of the state it actually hits. And that'll have really dictate over the next couple of weeks how much more fire activity we have as we start shifting some of these large fire events from suppression to suppression repair to recovery. That's kind of the stage of the time of year of just transitioning that workload from one action to the next. Departments involved in all facets of that process. And then just a highlight of our partners that have come through for us this year. It's been the systems took a bit of a strain, but it definitely works. Between the rangeland associations that have been highly engaged on fires on the east side of the state, partnering with CAL FIRE and having a state agreement with them has proven very timely. For this year, we've utilized their resources a lot, working with their tribal partners, OSFM, and our forest protective associations and landowner groups. So cooperatively, it's been a fantastic fire season with all things considered. I believe that's my last slide finally. So it's a slide through presentation of a lot of graphics, but say any questions on fire season?
I've got a couple if nobody else does. So.
Go ahead.
So you notice we had all the states there. Do you anticipate us going out to the other states from now until the end of the year, but their fire season's not quite over yet? Sending folks out.
I would anticipate that there would be a respective recovery period before we would be expected to respond.
Okay.
So I think a lot of folks know that our people have been engaged for a while, so it might take us a little bit before we can start rebuilding that bank account again of help. But there's hopefully we get a little bit of a reprieve, but I know California's been getting a little more active.
Yeah. And then you mentioned FEMA eligible fires. Could you explain that just a little bit, what that means?
Yep. So so when a fire impacts or causes a significant number of evacuations or has the potential to be a disaster, then FEMA has a program called the Fire Management Assistance Grant. And the state can apply for certain fire specific incidences for that. And what it does is it's a reimbursement program for actions taken to control the fire. So ODF suppression work. FEMA will assist with financially reimbursing the state for those types of near disasters. The counties who do sheriffs with evacuations or their emergency operation shelters, emergency operation centers, sheltering, that type of stuff, where the counties are, due to the emergency, are expending funds that they don't otherwise budgeted. Those are eligible for reimbursement with FEMA. So it's a cost share program, and so about 75% of the costs are covered. So for some of these incidences where they really impact populated areas, Grant County area, with the Round Monument and some of those other towns that have been impacted all summer, they've received a few of the fires in those areas have received that designation, and that'll be a financial relief to Grant County.
I got one more, Wendy, but kind of want to Mauricio go.
Thank you, Tim. Very informative. I love to see this presentation presented to our local meetings with the Oswa group, for example, to inform them, because that would be very cool. It'd be very nice to be informed at the end of the season. Thank you for all you have done. A couple of questions. Do we have data on volunteers' participations? All the firefighting so we have the professionals, and many communities react or respond to local with volunteers. Are we collecting information and data how volunteers participate in this?
So for ODF, we don't utilize volunteer firefighters. So all of us are we're either a seasonal or a permanent hire with the department, or we work with other cooperating agencies. Where the volunteer firefighters come into play is actually with the work that the fire marshal does when they mobilize some of their structural protection task forces. So that question and information would probably be best held by them.
Okay. He may have been asking about volunteers around camp and everything too.
Oh, for fire camp?
Is that what you're asking, Mauricio, around fire
Yeah,
camp?
a little bit of that, but also we have many of our rural fire protection districts. They're 100% manned by volunteer. There is no paid individuals in those.
Yep. So that type of statistics would be probably the fire marshal may have some data on that. I do know also I mentioned the rangeland fire protection associations that are largely on the east side of the state. They do track fire suppression hours, and they are also all volunteers. And those are reported to the Board of Forestry every June.
Okay, thank you. The second question I have very quickly is, do we have data on fire burning on land that have been burned before few years ahead? So in other words, if it is, are there statistics that say if we have a fire on this particular unit of land, statistically speaking, or we have data that said it's never going to happen in the next 10 years, or it may happen in the next 5 years? Do we have data on how fire show up again in land that's been previously burned?
So the return interval, I think, is what you're getting at. And so if I knew when a fire was going to return to a section of land, we would probably keep them a lot smaller. But as far as it's more of a looking in the past more so than projecting the future. I think so we have fire perimeters, and we can overlay that fire perimeter with a certain set of geography and see, okay, if this acre was within a fire in 2012, it was within a fire in 2017, but I can't project that. I don't think I could project that there because we have a certain human component to some of these fires, and that throws a significant wild card in where they start.
So
Okay, thank you.
Mauricio, just to give you an idea, I've been doing fires now for 30 plus years, off and on. There have been 3 fires now in the last probably 5 years that I was on early on in my career. They burned the same area again. Spada Mountain Complex burned some ground that I was on fire. Another light.
So 20 years later.
Well, yeah, and that was just, but those are all lightning storms, but it has to do with recovery of the vegetation as well out there. So yeah, fuel loads.
East side fire regime, generally 5 to 25 years would be reasonable. West side could be anywhere from 20 to 100 years.
Yeah.
So we have both fire regimes in the state, and then the Southern Oregon, Southwest Oregon combines both.
Yeah.
And it could be the next year, it could be the next 100 years. So we try to position ourselves not strategically, but also, when we have a lightning storm moving through the state, we know where some of those areas just are over, as Mike said, over careers and some intuitive knowledge. And, we have data on which ridges get hit by lightning. That helps us identify those, and so we can get to them faster and pre-position resources accordingly.
Thank you, Tim.
And I wanted to come back to some that Tim mentioned, suppression, repair versus restoration activities, kind of like what Gary was asking about. Suppression repair happens during the fire. That's after we catch the fire, get a line around it, feel safe that it's caught. We start doing repair work on the lines. Like if we damage the fence, we fix it. If we got a dozer line in the wrong place, we can take care of that, make sure it doesn't damage the ground anymore. So that's suppression repair work. Then what I was talking about with the emergency forest restoration program is actually restoration work that happens typically months and years later on. So just want to make sure everybody understood the differences there.
Mm-hmm. I have a question. From the last question Mauricio asked, I was curious about whether land is more likely to reburn if it's been burned once or not. I didn't quite get a sense of the answer to that. I happened to drive by the Canyonville fire, which was burning an area that had burned not too many years ago, and I was curious if a situation like that with a fair amount of standing dead wood is more likely to burn again or less because it's been burned and the underbrush died out at the first fire.
That's an excellent question. Think of it somehow, how we kind of do our fuel treatments, where we we might go through a mechanically thin, but we do prescribed fire. The goal is that we don't necessarily change the probability of a fire occurring, but we manipulate the intensity of a fire when it happens. And that's essentially what happens in some of these areas too. So, the timing of a brush component at times could be fairly explosive in some of these areas where the brush does come back and there's no overstory or a snag field in some of these other areas. So it's at times it's a combination of firefighter safety. If we can get firefighters into some of these areas that have had some of this intense stand replacing fire in the past, like the Stouts Creek area or some of these high cascade fires where it's largely snags, and we have a different, it's not necessarily the intensity of the fire, but it's the different aspect of decision making that we have to take into account. But I think for some of these areas, so when they burn the second time, there's inherently less fuel. So the intensity changes, but the propensity of a fire to start and spread may not change.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. So we're manipulating one portion of fire behavior.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I had a technical question, which was about when you had the numbers up on one of your slides, you were talking about gross and net. And I think you answered this question. Maybe it has to do with reimbursement, but I wasn't sure what a gross cost and a net cost was. Could you explain that?
That's an excellent question. So the gross cost is all the money ODF has to pay for fires in the beginning. So any fire that starts on ODF protected lands, ODF pays all the bills from the start. And it's consistent with our say the U.S. Forest Service has a fire that starts on their lands. It's called a paying agent. So there's always an entity that's the paying agent for each fire. And then then we look at it, we're in a cost share agreement with our federal partners. Then that would reduce those gross costs. We would share, say we spent $50 million on a fire and it was half ODF acres and half Forest Service acres, we would split that 25-25. And then also I mentioned the FEMA programs. So certain fires will have we have a cost share with FEMA as well, and that lowers that. So we ended up getting down to a net. So it's kind of like your income taxes. Because you have your gross pay and then your net after deductions. This is kind of what we're doing with some of the fire costs, but it's to show one of them, the gross cost is agency cash flow. The net cost is the portions of what we go to the legislature and ask for. Usually you'll see those on the e-board requests in the fall.
So the net is really the ODF budget hit, and the cost of the fires and wherever it comes from is the gross of the firefight.
Yeah. And we're waiting generally between the net and the gross, that amount. That's what we're working with our partners for reimbursement, and that's the kind of the money that's floated.
Mm-hmm. One thing we're going to be talking about a little later in our agenda is messaging around fire and fire prevention, and especially human-caused fires, and how to use all this great existing data. Plus, I would mention your slides, the pictures, the visuals were amazing. They give like great imagery that's really compelling. In one of your slides, it was called Current Situation, and you had like 2024 year to date, and you put lightning and human and UI fires and total, and that was very interesting. But it had like the number of fires and the acres. It would be really interesting to have a slide that included the gross cost, because, and I've been thinking about, and I think others on the committee too, about how messaging could be compelling and showing because your 10-year average for that shows that like humans caused 604 fires, which burned 28,000 acres, and knowing the cost to that to taxpayers would be compelling. And I'm assuming you have that data somewhere. I'm just saying it would be interesting to have a slide with all three components, the causation and the cost.
Absolutely. And I saw on your agenda to have Chris up soon, and I think you're gonna have a really exciting conversation with her, because she has all this the similar data as well. And humans cause between 60 and 80% of our fires. It really depends on how much lightning we get each year. But they're also those are the fires that start in and around communities, is generally human caused. And then the lightning fires are out in the wilderness and on the higher grounds. So the ones that impact people are usually started by people.
Yep. Any other questions or comments? I'm seeing some nods of appreciation. So I think we're down to the questions and comments. That really was an interesting and helpful presentation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, what you can't see is just how tired Tim is on his face. He looks exhausted. So.
Yeah, believe that. All right, thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Tim.
Appreciate the opportunity to chat.
Thank you, Tim.
I keep thinking that Carol has her hand up because there's a yellow something or other in the corner of your screen. It's funny.
I really should blur my thing. It's my mom sends me all this like underwater stuff. So
It's cool.
I hang it all in my window. I've got a salmon and a jelly. Yeah. Anyway.
I'm not seeing any actual hands up right now, and I'm thinking this might be a good time to take our break. So unless I see shaking heads, I'm going to call for us we had a 15-minute break. So let's take that now and come back at 10:35.
Yep. No, see where Kristen is. Chris.
Does that work? Okay. See you later at 10:35. Mike, I think we can continue to discuss our agenda list if Chris can't come early.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Is Heather in the room?
Hey, Kristen.
Hi,
Hey,
Kristen.
hi. I was wondering if we could see if we could get my presentation up on screen at some point when you're ready.
Yeah, we can do that. I will have to make you co-host,
Okay.
and then from there you can share.
Okay.
Hello, I'm checking in to see if most everyone is back. You could turn your cameras on, committee members, and we can see who's here. Remotely, I can't quite see everyone, Heather. So if Heather and Mike, if you think that everyone is here,
We're good.
is everyone pretty much back?
Yes.
Okay, then I will say thank you so much to Kristen Babs for coming on quite short notice. I really appreciate it to give a presentation about wildfire publicity. I'll turn it over to you to Kristen. Thank you.
Okay, happy to be here today. Thank you for the invitation. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Okay. All right. So I was asked to come and talk a little bit about, and I'm going to keep my camera off because I'm working remotely as well, and it's a little testy out here in Sheridan. So let me know if you have any issues. Maybe Wendy, you can give me some kind of signal if something is awry. But I think we'll just go ahead and start and introduce myself. My name is Chris Babs, and I am the president of the Keep Oregon Green Association. And we're a nonprofit dedicated to promoting healthy landscapes and safe communities by educating the public of our shared responsibility to prevent human-caused wildfires. And we've been at this mission since 1941. We're actually older than the Smokey Bear campaign of 1944, who's celebrating his 80th year this year. So yeah, we've been doing this quite a bit here in Oregon for quite a long time. And I'll just jump right into it and talk a little bit about one of your main questions, which was causes of wildfire. And so what we're looking at is essentially a couple of things. Natural cause wildfires, which is what we're dealing with kind of right now and over the last weekend. Spontaneous combustion is another source, lava, things like that, forces of nature. But the thing obviously that we're concerned about is the human caused wildfire aspect. So as you see above, lightning is very much a seasonal activity here in Oregon, and we can typically expect it somewhere around mid-July and sometime in September. But with human-caused wildfires, it's all year long. We start recording them on January 1, and we finish recording them on December 31. And we'll take a look at the data here in a little bit for what we see for 2024, but there's so many sources of ignition that I'm going to cover. And the way that those are tracked is people who are doing things, directly, they're lighting something out on the landscape. That's a behavioral thing that we're trying to correct. And then there are other sources that are kind of more indirect, like power lines. Those do fall into my category, but I don't necessarily track those as much because we know what the source is. We know where to go for that. It's the other kind of wild card issues, the behavioral stuff that we're trying to address through awareness and education. And so with that, know that over 70% of Oregon's wildfires are human caused, 100% preventable, but also know that for 2024, we're trending around 75% for this year. So let's dive into the causes. And just a quick look at the 2024 data. So this is as of 9/7. I took a peek at the Oregon Department of Forestry's fires database, and it's very interesting to see a big flip in the trend that we have been seeing since I've been in this job as of 2014. So equipment fires this year is leading the charge. Debris burning is usually in the top spot, so it's kind of interesting to see that, but this is just a snapshot in time as of January 1 to where we're at right now. Equipment fires are leading the way, followed by debris burning, and then this miscellaneous category has popped into the top three. And miscellaneous is kind of like your weird fire causes that we really don't know. It doesn't fall into an easily defined category, so it kind of falls into this catch-all. And so, for example, it would be a squirrel or a bird hitting a power line, dropping to the ground and starting a wildfire. It would be a house that starts on fire and then catches the rest of their surroundings, and then the wildland on fire. So it's just kind of this weird catch-all category. And then recreation Usually is in the top 3, but that has fallen out, and that's number 4. Then we get down into your smoking fires, arson, which is a little bit lower, at least right now, than it was last year. Juveniles, we keep track of them too. Railroad fires, that's kind of more that indirect category that I was talking about earlier. And then we've just got a ton of wildfires right now that are under investigation. And we won't know what those are until fire season comes to a close. People are back in the office. They're sifting through the fires database and putting an actual cause to those fires. But let's talk about contributing factors and why we're seeing what we're seeing. What it really boils down to, and this comes into, I mean, when you look at it under Oregon state law, Oregon Revised Statutes 477, what ODF is looking at are people that are doing things that are willful, malicious, or negligent on the landscape. And I think by and large, what we're seeing for the most part are negligence fires, people that have failed to take some kind of an action to stop a wildfire that they accidentally started. And so I would just put this baseline out there that for any wildfire season, what kind of triggers things for us is what we're seeing here with this weather and drought situation across the landscape. If it's a really bad drought year, and we've been seeing that since 2015, we're going to see a bad human-caused fire year. When things are green and great and we've got shots of rain throughout the summer, those numbers are going to be low. From what I see right now from that data that I just shared with you, we're actually kind of bucking the trend. I haven't seen fires that low in that 593 category. I usually go into the state fair end of August with numbers in that range, and then we're ending fire season in the 700s, 800s. So by seeing those low numbers at this point in the year, I think we're doing pretty well. That said, what contributes to the fire cause problem are people's actions, behaviors, attitudes, the kinds of things that they're doing. So around the home, around their property, if they're leaving a lot of landscape debris and clutter, clearly we know that fire follows the fuel. And so that's why we try to encourage defensible space. If there were an accident that would start, it wouldn't spread to neighboring lands and then become a raging wildfire affecting private forest land beyond that. Maybe you and I have oftentimes attended weddings in August where they light the bonfire. That's the risk that, or this overconfidence behavior or attitude that we're trying to overcome. These people that have had this tradition, we've always done fill in the blank and nothing bad has ever happened. We've always burned in August and nothing bad has ever happened, or September, or in the spring. And then you get that holdover fire in fire season. And then people get distracted. They light a burn pile and they go in and watch the football game. They turn and leave their campfire unattended for a moment, or maybe they go to bed and don't fully put it out. They fall asleep, barbecues left unattended, just a whole host of things that can happen if somebody's distracted. And then with people taking shortcuts, lighting a burn pile with accelerant, you can see how things could quickly get out of control. But in my mind, what I've been seeing in this job over the last 10 years is that it really boils down to money. An example of that is the ability to, like, for example, in Douglas County, people could take their debris to the landfill, their trash to the landfill, and the fee to take it there was minimal. And then when they increased the fees, people started debris burning. They started burning their trash, and then we started getting fires. So another leading cause for that equipment category is vehicle fires. And that's a money issue. If people don't have the wherewithal to fix their car to get from point A to point B, and that car breaks down, catches fire, creates the hazard that starts the wildfire, whether it's the brakes or the catalytic converter or whatever, that's going to cause the wildfire. So our bottom line has always been be prepared, be set up for safety from the start, stay with whatever open flame you're dealing with, have fire tools on hand. We continuously push the know before you go message and the call before you burn message. That's really important for us. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a picture as to why we see what we're seeing out there. Obviously, the effects that we're dealing with are, they range from the health impacts like smoke, burns to the body that land you at the burn center, loss of life. We saw that in 2020. We see recreation impacts go back to 2017 and the Eagle Creek fire. So it leads to just further fire restrictions. Maybe it's campfire bans for the entire summer for a particular area of Oregon, or complete trail campground closures for the foreseeable future. And then we've seen these this year: homes lost, businesses lost, transportation routes closed. They closed I-84 earlier this summer. Just a whole host of things that can happen as a result of wildfire. And then, of course, we get the habitat loss and landslide issues. So when it comes to prevention, and I know that this was a question about budgeting, but I can tell you this: of all of the tools at an agency's disposal to deal with unwanted wildfire, prevention is going to be your least expensive bet. We really try to do what we can to message early and extend that messaging as long as we can, or as long as needed. We got to wait for those, fall rains to return, but I can tell you that the license plate revenue has really saved this organization. And we are able to do earlier, do longer as needed. We do follow the data that tells us where the wildfires are starting in kind of the more challenging parts of the state, but now we have the ability to reach all areas of the state with our messaging. And then the last part of this is to develop some systems and tools to help make it easier for Oregonians to do the right thing when nobody is looking. Right? So it comes back to that money piece. If there's smoke in the air, like I remember back to the Chetco Bar fire, there was smoke in the air over on the coast, and people were deliberately burning because they could get away with it. There was smoke in the air. Nobody would be able to detect the smoke from their debris pile, and they would go ahead and do it. So if we can increase investments in prevention on the front end, it's going to save us a lot of money on the back end. And the challenge with prevention, of course, is that it's very difficult to measure and difficult to prove. I can't say that my messaging prevented this fire from happening, but we do look to the data and see that decline over time to tell us that we're on the right track. And at least for 2024, we are kind of swimming against that tide of a backdrop of, triple-digit temperatures and a challenging fire environment. So into the solution, when we talk about prevention, what that means is education, engineering, and enforcement. So we're doing the education. Lots of other agencies are out there doing the same. When it comes to engineering, that means how can we construct the landscape? How can we set up systems? How can we set up the tools to defensible space would be an example of that too. Engineering your landscape so that if something bad were to happen, the fire wouldn't escape. And so like I look to ODOT, maybe hardening the roadside so that if there were a vehicle fire, there would be safe places for people to pull over on gravel, pavement, or whatever, and not dry grass lining our roadsides in Oregon. That's an example of engineering. And then enforcement is the teeth that if we catch somebody doing the wrong thing, that we prevent them from doing bad things in the future. So that's kind of my parting line, other than keep Oregon green. Predictable is preventable. If you can visualize your wildfire, your action, your behavior that's happening out on the landscape in the summertime turning into a massive wildfire, don't do it. Postpone whatever that activity is and save it for a later day when conditions are safe. So again, pushing out those key messages of know before you go, follow the fire restrictions. We push that very hard. When in doubt, call your local fire authority, always check the weather. It's really important that we share with folks. This is the big thing, is they don't realize that hot equipment and dry vegetation can turn into a wildfire, namely vehicles. And then I'm seeing this message kind of coming into play more and more as folks choosing a camp stove over a campfire. Campfire bans, especially on parks, property is becoming a reality. They're all out bans. And I think people are switching over to a portable campfire or a camp stove to be able to continue with their activities that they want to do outdoors. And then make sure that all your fires, your ashes are dead out. Do that properly, especially in the spring. We don't want to see those holdover debris burn piles turn into wildfires as soon as fire season kicks in. And really just trying to help folks keep, if they're conducting any activities out in their property, whatever, if they're cutting firewood out on a forest land area, keep fire tools on hand, just be safe. Set up for safety and keep fire tools on hand. That's really the parting message as well. So these are the kinds of things that I'm wanting to do is, again, it's back to the systems and the tools that make it easy for folks to do the right thing, even when nobody's looking. If we've missed them at home with our messaging, then we need to provide that type of messaging at their destination. And in my time here at Keep Oregon Green, I've seen some big deficiencies, and these are the ways that we're trying to fix at least the top 3 culprits that I mentioned earlier in the data. So let's start with the first one. Oops, the first one is debris burning. That's the one that usually leads the pack. And there's a new app that's being developed by the Oregon Department of Forestry in conjunction with the Western Fire Chiefs Association. And if you can imagine, this app would geolocate you on the landscape. You would sign up to essentially let your local fire department know that you are burning that day, or that you plan to burn in the near future. Here's where my pile is. And then that way, when it comes closer to the time that you want to burn, you pull out your app and you can see through the various jurisdictions that control burning on your property, who's leading the pack that day. Is it ODF? Is it your local fire department? Is it DEQ? Is it, fill in the blank. It's so confusing for just your average person who owns 5 acres to know whether it's a safe day to burn debris or not. And, the challenge there is that we've been dealing with is, like, sometimes folks will call the ag line, which is that's a different jurisdiction and different property owners. But when they feel like they're getting a green light, then they burn and blame it on the burn line. So by giving forestry folks, or just your average homeowner, a place to go to find out whether they can burn debris, regardless of who controls burning in your spot, you'll know right away. You'll know whether you have a green light or a red light to burn. And so that's the bottom line, is that, if our own forest officers are confused by the regulations and the jurisdictional information that's coming out, this is a way to solve that problem. The next one would be equipment and the vehicle fires that I mentioned. And for 2024, at least right now, they are leading the pack. And when you dig into the data, it is vehicle fires. It comes down to carbon particles coming out of the exhaust system, parking cars idling over tall, dry grass, the vehicle catching on fire, all those kinds of things. Milepost 98 fire that they're dealing with right now in Southwest Oregon is a perfect example of that. Car caught on fire and spread to the wildland. So what I'm trying to do is, my parting message with that is, there are lots of different ways that your vehicle can start a fire, but for folks to know that their best bet is to carry a fire extinguisher in their vehicle. The challenge with that is that extinguishers expire. If you go to buy one at Costco, they expire every 12 months. And so when they go to grab that extinguisher, if it's not working, that's not helping us at all. There's a company out there called Element Fire. If you go to elementfire.com, they have a couple of different sizes of fire extinguishers. They call one the E50 that fires for 50 seconds, and another one called the E100 that fires for 100 seconds. They don't expire, and they look They look like a flare. They're the size of a flare. They're the weight of maybe a little bit heavier than a flare, and they fire like a flare. And they're the best thing that I've ever seen. And I'm trying to promote that with state agencies to see if we can make sure that state employees are carrying those in their rigs so that they can deal with their own vehicle, but maybe come to the aid of others on the roadway. But if all Oregonians could carry those fire extinguishers with them, we'd be in a better place. On the education side of it, I'm working with the DMV, and this has already been happening since the end of June. So we've got posters and rack cards up in all of the 59 field offices around the state of Oregon. And we've also got an insert that is going into all of the tag renewal, trailer renewal inserts going out to all Oregonians. And that's 4 million people across the state. We're going to hit 2 million this year, 2 million next year, 2 million after that. A couple of years reminders in there that here are 6 different ways your car can start a wildfire. Please carry a fire extinguisher. And then the other piece to that is the Oregon driver's education classes that prep teens for driving and the DMV instruction manuals that they use to pass their tests. Those need to have that kind of information in there as well. Folks need to know different ways that their vehicles can start wildfires. I'm also working with a guy who has an app. He's from Canada, but he works all across the United States with an app called Trip Score. And students use this as kind of like a system to earn digital badges, but they have a geofencing capacity, whereas if students are signed up for Trip Score, if you drive through an area and you cross this geofence, he can set these up. Like you're entering a forest land, you need to check fire restrictions, or we talked about the fire extinguisher piece. If we could, double up with elementfire.com and see if they would be willing to provide discounts to students to put one in their car. I mean, just a whole host of things that we're working on right now on those messaging pieces, but more to come. But it's very exciting. And this has always been the most challenging piece because, again, it gets down to money. It gets down to people's ability to fix their cars. People are living out of their cars. They're driving poorly maintained vehicles. These are what are starting fires. So if we can nail this one and start to decrease the data in that category, will go a long way. The third leading cause, campfires. As I mentioned, those are just in the double digits this year, which really surprises me, and that's a good thing. But the other thing that I've noticed lately, and I will challenge you to do this as well, when you drive into a campground, there is no information on the kiosk when you enter that campground about drown, stir, drown your fire until it's dead out. Nothing. I've been into many Forest Service campgrounds, parks, county campgrounds. There's nothing. So we worked with the prevention team this year to create some base signage. And I don't think the Forest Service has the money this year to deal with that, but hopefully for 2025, we're going to get signage posted all around the state of Oregon with that key messaging. Drown, stir, drown, use water on your campfire, put it out until it's cold to the touch. So let's fix it. That's the big piece. I think as we kind of come to a close, I wanted to leave some time for questions, and I think I saw some there in the chat, but just to let folks know that this is the campaign that we've got rolling this year. Put your smoky hat on. We've got billboards up all over the state. We've got TV and radio advertising up around the state. We use social media. Our partners are right in there with us. From ODF to the State Fire Marshal's Office, Forest Service, everybody has been beating the drum this summer and talking prevention. So hopefully you've seen and heard our ads. It's important stuff that we're trying to get out there. And again, the plate income has really helped with that. The KOG license plates themselves are mobile billboards. So that's been a great thing for us. But yeah, this is how we can help is to, I try to encourage everybody to learn about where they can go to get the fire restrictions or fire information that they need, anywhere from watch duty. If you don't have this app, it's great. You can sign up for notifications for your county if there's a fire breaking out. You can see all of the fires that are happening in the western states. If you don't have that app, I highly encourage you to get it. Air Now is another great example of an app that kind of monitors air quality around the state and what the health of that air quality is at the time. And then teaching others. If you hadn't heard about those element fire extinguishers, go check them out. They're amazing. They're kind of expensive, but again, you never have to maintain them. They don't expire. Don't have to recharge them. Don't have to flip them up and down and loosen the powder. So teach others. Tell others about us. That's an important thing too, is that people rally around our motto of keeping Oregon green. Lead by example when you're in a group setting, like I was at a wedding and they're about ready to light that bonfire in August. Say, ho, 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 hold up. We've got some fire restrictions in place. You can't do that. And then support for our organization is always important, whether it's agencies supporting us through grants, the public supporting us through the purchase of the license plates, private property owners donating to Keep Oregon Green annually. That's a huge help for us. So with that, I will close out and I'm going to stop sharing. And I'll turn on my camera because I think it's a little bit safer now for me to do that. Hello.
Thanks so much. I'm sure people have lots of questions, so I'm looking for comments and thoughts. Hands up.
That's it. Somebody got it right there. They put it in the chat.
Where?
It's there's a photo of it and a link to
right. Oh, yeah.
fire extinguishers. They're absolutely, so I brought both of them to the state fair this year and I had it under plexiglass. And the people that would come through and see it, that yellow piece kind of catches people's eyes. But my line there was just, this is a fire extinguisher. If you wanted to learn more about it, go to this company. And I'm like, I have nothing to do with the company. I'm not getting any royalties or commission from sales. I just believe that we need to have fire extinguishers in our vehicles. It's just so important. So, and there's so many examples in the past of even timber companies coming to the aid of your average Joe citizen on the roadside whose vehicle is starting to get out of control, and they put it out for them. And the comment sometimes that I hear back is like, well, that's what insurance is for. And I'm like, yeah. But if you've got 50 to 100 seconds to put out that car fire and save all of these homes up the hill from you, that's huge. So that's where I'm coming from. What
Dave?
other? Yeah, I think that's it that I see in the chat.
I think Dave Bogney has his hand up.
I just thank you for that. These past two presentations were marvelous. I'm wondering, would it be possible to share those, and would we have permission to present those at our local CCFFA, Clackamas County Fire and Forestry Association, and Clackamas River Basin Council meetings as information?
I'm willing to go anywhere and do anything to talk to anybody.
Okay,
if you guys are going to send me the invitation, I'm there. If it works for my schedule, I'm happy, absolutely happy to present what I've talked about today. Yeah.
Good. And even if you couldn't, if we could have a copy of your presentation as well as the previous one, just to kind of round things out, would be great.
You bet.
Thank you.
Sorry, I thought that was a question for the CFF folks. So I was like, if you want to have me, it's.
And this is Maurizio. Thank you, Chris, for a great presentation. I love the work. Did not know about this fire extinguisher here. And I had one time one of the neighbors that got into a car accident, and the fire extinguisher that he had in the back was not secured. and he flew all the way in front to poke a round hole next to his head through the windshield. So the advantage of extinguishers like this, they're safer when you go around and drive around with that. The one question is, once they start, they discharge completely, right? You don't stop and go. Once you start that, you need to completely discharge the fire extinguisher, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So cool. The other thing that you mentioned earlier is the debris burning application. Do you have an email or something or a website for that debris burning application, ODF and Western Fire Chief Association? You mentioned that.
I did. So, and I'm turning off my video because my internet's a little unstable out here. I missed a little bit of what you said, Maurizio. I don't know if I'm the only one that
Okay, so do you have
experienced that, but
do you have an address for the debris burning application that is being developed by ODF and Western Fire Chief Association?
so I can't share any of that information yet because it's being pilot tested
Okay.
right now. But so it's being pilot tested in 5 counties. We wanted to hit hard the Southwest Oregon area and the Eastern Oregon area, and then also bring it over to Northwest Oregon too, to make sure that we're not being discriminatory. Even though we've got other areas of the state that catch fire a little easier than others, we wanted to make sure that all 3 areas were involved in the testing of the application to work out any kinks with it. So I don't know when that testing is going to wrap up. That's in ODF's purview, but I can tell you that I think they hope to launch it by and that it's ready by 2025 to go statewide. So when that happens, I know you guys will hear about it. You've got links, I'm sure, on this with this organization, with the Oregon Department of Forestry. So once that app is ready to go, I will help market it big time.
Thank you.
Yep. You can see, you can kind of get a sense of what it's like if you go to
Kristen, you've cut out for me anyway.
Sisters Camp Sherman website. They have their own. I cut out. Okay, sorry. I'll leave it there.
I can't see hands up in the room as well. That Gary or anyone else have any questions or comments?
No, we don't, Wendy.
Okay. I had a couple. One was thank you, first of all, Kristen. That's really interesting. And one of the topics in terms of thinking about this issue, the CFF, is its role is to advise the Board of Forestry and the state forester and work with the department and be sort of out in the community, informing people of issues and being a liaison between the department and community. So that's sort of the angle from which we come at this issue, and thinking about ways to modernize and move forward with fire messaging and prevention, this topic we've been thinking about. And this, what you've been mentioning, is just saying that it should be baked in terms of automobile ownership and use, that you need to have a fire extinguisher and be prepared to put out a fire. So that's great to know. And the app is also excellent progress. In terms of questions, I was curious about what your relationship is with ODF, because you're a nonprofit. So how do you work with ODF, and how do you expect to use data from ODF going forward and coordinate communication efforts?
So going back to 1941, we've been linked with the Department of Forestry from the very beginning, and we've always been located on their compound. My office is still located at the headquarters there in Salem, and we have a contractual relationship to combat human-caused wildfires on their behalf. So Tom Fields is my counterpart with the Oregon Department of Forestry, and he deals with the industrial fire precaution level, the industrial side of fire prevention, and then I deal with the public side. So that's our separation. But that's not to say that I don't, yes, we have this contractual relationship, but I also work with all of the other forestry type agencies around the state, from Forest Service, BLM, State Fire Marshal's Office, now that they're in the wildfire prevention game, BIA. All of those partners are incredibly
Thanks.
Important
and
to us and help us spread
sorry, I interrupt. Yeah, and I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's just you cut out a teeny bit, so I jumped in there. But I think I heard basically all of what you said, and but you were talking about the working with other agencies as well.
Yep.
Another question I had has to do with like um, in terms of human caused fires and miscellaneous. I was curious if miscellaneous includes like encampment fires, or like I'm down in Ashland, where of course the Alameda fire was one that started in an encampment down by the creek, and I was recently in Bend where there was a fire just out the city that started an encampment. What are thoughts in terms of, as you mentioned, more people like living in their cars and living out in forested areas for reasons having to do lack of a home? What are thoughts going forward on that kind of messaging and prevention?
Oh boy, that's a huge nut to crack. So I can tell you that as we track the data, I would say mid through my time here at KOG, we weren't separately tracking the unhoused, but we are now. So when you look at a matrix, and the way that we lay out the data when fire season comes to a close is that I have users on the left side and the causes across the top, and where those things meet together. Maybe it was a hunter that started a campfire. Maybe it was a motorist that started a vehicle fire. So there are all of these different users that we are tracking, and we did pull out the unhoused. I can't tell you what year that was, but we're tracking them now. And the number it's not huge statewide, but it's huge when you talk to folks locally. So like, for example, on the coast over in Coos Bay, 40% of their wildfires are started by the unhoused. But then that doesn't necessarily translate back to the bigger statewide data. It kind of, it just kind of gets muddled in there with the rest of the users. So
is it in miscellaneous then? I'm just curious in terms of your numbers where that sits.
Typically wait till the end of fire season to really dig into the user side, that side, the causing agent, because that's a deeper dive and a data extraction. I just kind of quickly looked at the fires database to give you the causes today, but in Coos Bay, we're working with that district and we're loaning camp stoves to the unhoused. They have a center there, the Devereaux Center, where the unhoused, whether they live urban or they're out in the wildlands, they come to the center for resources. So we purchased the camp stoves and we also purchased the fuel containers. And so it's working because they're coming back with their empties and replenishing their fuel canisters and then going back out and doing what they're doing. And then this summer, I worked with a company called Sea to Summit. They have portable sinks, essentially a 5-liter bucket, if you will, that's not a hard-sided bucket. It's a collapsible container so that if something were to break out, they could go grab water from a water source and bring it back and extinguish the fire. On the coast, obviously, they're dealing with folks on the coastline in the grass. So by being able to give them, again, another tool, whether it's the camp stove, the sink to put it out, because as we were learning with the camp stoves, folks were coming back and telling me that the putting out, but they were only using these small water bottles. And I'm like, well, let's give them something a little bit bigger, but something portable that they can carry around with them. So we're trying that. I don't know if that's going to work in all areas. It's going to have to work with folks that are, like it could work out in Malala. I know they're dealing with an issue out there with the unhoused, but they've got a lot of folks that are camping along the river out there. So it's going to be kind of unique to a certain setting where some of these tools can apply, but at least we're trying to figure it out. But relatively speaking, when they do start fires, they're pretty small. The acreage isn't too big. So But it is a concern, you know, another part of my concern is the van life community, the folks that are living in their really nice Sprinter vans. They know that the West, that we've got all of this free public land out here and that they can camp for 2 weeks at a time. And I've seen some awful stuff online of them, you know, lighting campfires when they really shouldn't be. Or they're knocking over campstones. I mean, they're just doing all kinds of crazy stuff out there. But the prevention team this past August, we were all together down in Merlin, and we were working on that community as well. I can add to that you're going to reach these folks with, you know, fitness centers where they take showers, laundromats, and new coming to Oregon is gas station TV. And maybe some of you guys have seen this. But when we were not allowed to pump our gas, it was not needed. Gas station TV was not a needed thing here. But now I think we've got 73 of them. Maybe some of you have pulled over, got gas, and are seeing those videos playing. And so we're looking into that as a marketing outlet. And, you know, showcasing 30-second ads or whatever, 15-second ads that show people that vehicles start fires. So that'll be a helpful venue as well.
Really helpful.
Hopefully you heard.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yep.
I think we're good. If I don't see any other hands up. Oh, Kate, sorry.
Just wanted to do another thank you to Chris for a great presentation. I know that we were able to recently partner with you from Oregon Tree Farm System, and that you're coming to our annual meeting in November. And if you do a presentation like this one, it's going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to our membership seeing it, because a whole bunch of woodland owners are always very excited about stopping wildfire and making sure it doesn't impact them. So thank you so much.
All right.
You bet.
Hey, thanks so much again, Kristen.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Next, we have on our agenda, we have Board of Forestry update with Ben Domling. Is he available? I can't see if he's logged on.
Don't think he was able to make it. I know he said he was going to try, but I haven't seen him log in, so.
If he can't attend, maybe the folks who presented want to give an overview. Not assuming that you attended the whole thing.
I did not attend the whole thing. I think this could be a segue into our discussion of topics, though, because the Board of Forestry did finalize its vision, I believe. That was an item they were supposed to act on. And so the document that we commented on, which was adopted, you can see some of the changes consistent with input from us and others, that they adopted their vision. And that's very high level. So the next point's going to be what I think metrics and objectives, maybe something like a much more specific version that I understand is going to be mainly developed by by ODF. So certainly part of what I hope the committee ends up doing in the upcoming year will be keeping an eye on that and commenting, especially, and making sure that small forest landowners are included in that, because the vision doesn't make too much mention of them. And so when the metrics are rolled out, it definitely should. I apologize, my dog is kind of crying in the next room. He's very old, so I will mute myself, but when I talk, that noise is my old dog feeling sad. So it sounds like we don't really have much more on Board of Forestry update unless other people on the committee have things they want to add. Oh, Rick.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again for all the preparation, and the presentation was really outstanding. I go to these meetings and they go on and on and on, and that meeting was particularly challenging. And so you guys were a breath of fresh air. Wendy quarterbacking, and Gary's comments, and Kate, and then Dave's statement. Very, very powerful stuff. And you could just see them lighting up, one, because it was positive and it was enough detail. It was just a great presentation. And in the peanut gallery, folks that I was sitting by who go to a lot of those meetings said, I really didn't even know what that committee did. Who are those guys? So congratulations. It was really, really good to see and reflected well, I think, on everyone.
Yeah. I've got a few notes with you. I don't know if that'll help folks from the board meeting. Oh, okay, sorry. Just a few, these are ones that Josh Bernard sent out. So the Regional Forest Practice Committee had their appointments and reappointments. I think there's discussion on that. I wasn't there, I wasn't listening then, so I'm not sure where that discussion went, but that was part of the board meeting. Urban Community Forestry Program updated the board on their education, technical, and funding services that they provide to Oregonians. See the annual Forest Accord implementation. Sorry, it's really small wording. The progress report was presented. Josh Bernard and Nicole gave that update. It was a very short presentation, but it kind of gave an update of what's going on with the PFA. See the inaugural, I can't say it. Climate Smart Forestry Award was given out, and I know Dave Bugney was the recipient, one of the recipients of that. So congratulations again to Dave on that one. And I'm trying to remember, is Dave and then Nature Conservancy and the Klamath Tribe, I believe, were the folks who received that award. And then our monitoring unit presented their 2023-24 reforestation study, which we mentioned earlier in our meeting. I'll have to get a hold of that. I have not seen it yet, and I kind of like to get a hold of that and read it myself. Forest Health Unit, they went on right before us, and I sat in for part of that. I know some of us were in there, and I'm trying to remember how the board phrased it. It was the presentation they gave on emerald ash borer and the oak death, the Mediterranean oak death, and sod and everything. It was all kind of, I think they said it was a morbid presentation, but one that was needed or something along those lines. So it was good to hear. They needed to hear what's going on with those topics across the state. So, and of course, our presentation with Committee of Family Forestlands. The one I didn't go back to is the post-disturbance harvest rulemaking was removed from the Board of Forestry, and I think it's going through some checks and balances right now. I'll have to get back to Josh to find out what exactly is going on with that to give you a better report on it. And that's all I had from my notes, Wendy. So.
Thanks, that was helpful. Any further thoughts on Board of Forestry issues?
I'll make one, and that I've heard on the side since I didn't sit through the whole meeting, but the Habitat Conservation Plan has quite a challenge from the Northwest school districts who are losing money because of a lack of harvest. And just this morning on the radio news coming north here, they were talking about one of the districts over there suing ODF and putting all their money into the pocket to go after them, even though it may mean the elimination of the district. And I'm not sure what that was. It wasn't Clackamas, it was the North Coast School District up there.
Jewel School District? Maybe.
Might be. But, and I'd been to one of the earlier meetings that ODF had opened up to the public and was amazed at the number of the school districts and the counties that were speaking in opposition to the habitat plan, specifically the reduction of the timber harvest by over 50% and the impact that has on those communities, and the request that somehow those funds be renewed or timber harvest continue. So it'll be interesting to see the follow-up and the outcome on this project.
And that was the State Forest HCP. Yeah.
Well, thank you. That takes us then to our end of that agenda item, about half an hour early. So we haven't had a break yet. Maybe does it work for people's timing to uh, like take a half an hour, 45-minute, hour-long lunch break right now and then come back and do our agenda? Do people have preferences as to, because we have an hour ahead of time and we may not need a whole hour lunch break. What would people like to do? Rick, do you want to move it more quickly? Is that you're saying? We could.
I have to jump after lunch, so if we can get through it now, I'd love to participate, but if not, that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Do people want to move straight to discussing upcoming meeting schedule right now without a break?
Sure.
Okay. Heather, I sent you an email with some text in it that I thought maybe you could share on the screen. Just it's really rough. It's like just my personal list that I've been keeping of topics from email with the recent read suggestions that we talked about 15 minutes before. Is there any way you could pop that up on the screen? Otherwise, I can go through it verbally.
Yes, let me know.
I tried to capture sort of the brainstorming over in our meetings over the year, some ideas like from Dave, some things that came up in our discussion of our annual report, and then I put in red what I thought we were talking about today. So you can sort of ignore my little intro, but if you look just the bullet points, I think that these are topics, and maybe you can look at them and I will just mention them and see if people think I've sort of captured the point. So again, these are our topic is upcoming meeting schedule and agenda topics, and this is a list of where I try and capture what I think people have asked for. So the first point is discussion of timber markets and small forest landowner infrastructure needs. That was something that we talked about a little bit today, and it's come up frequently. What ideas that our committee has for addressing issues, and perhaps a presentation. Amanda suggested Gordon Culbertson maybe for this topic. I don't know him, but do people agree with this topic idea? And would they like to have a presentation on this? Okay. Second bullet point is maybe collaboration with the small forest landowner office, and we did talk about that quite a bit on our annual report and the ways the office and CFF could work together. We could ask for Katie Blauvelt, who's the head of that office, to come and talk to us. And then just earlier in this meeting, we were talking about partnerships and effective collaboration, which could be part of that discussion. And the fact that ODF leadership is needed in terms of making collaboration with partners effective. Okay on that topic or suggestions? Looks okay. A topic that's been mentioned would be programs for fuels reductions, what state and federal programs are working, and what's needed. Any barriers involved? Sound okay? Feel free to speak up without my calling on you because I'm just looking at my screen. So if you want to interrupt, just say something. I put down the update on the SFISH grant program tax issue. I think we covered that pretty thoroughly today, and I hope if something comes up, I hope we'll be updated. But I don't think we need to put that on our, we can cross that off, I think, on our list. I put in two things next that Amanda suggested, which I think are interesting: a briefing on new stream classifications and what it means to be a perennial. To my mind, that would be helpful. All right, no comments on hearing. So, and the next one is Amanda's workforce study, the one that's being done for a future meeting. I think it'd be useful to have a presentation on that. People okay with that? That sounds good. I'm appreciating your thumb, Dave. And the next one is the climate action, an update on climate action and the natural and working lands, what that looks like. I'm not sure I wrote this down correctly, but Dave, could you maybe mention, this is something I took from your list, I think. I think it's maybe Climate Action Committee on Natural and Working Lands or something like that, and figuring out what climate smart forestry looks like, including carbon sequestration, and possibly markets for credits on SFO properties, carbon offset credits, and what the barriers are there.
Right. I mean, the idea is that we have kind of people pursuing common goals, but from different directions, right? And it would be interesting to see where there's commonalities and see where perhaps some of these other organizations or whatnot, like the Climate Action Commission or Oregon Global Warming, whatever they're called now, how they can help us and how we can help them, et cetera, and what the end game is and how that relates to the carbon programs that we're trying to get people to sign on to for that the SFOs can do for carbon storage and sequestration. So that's a big topic. I think that we could help inform people what the possibilities are, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Mm-hmm. So I think I just left out maybe the word commission, Climate Action Commission or something like that. Okay, not hearing objections. The next one is the loss of SFO lands, where they're going, how to push back against this trend. One point that I added here was succession, generational succession of forest lands, and how to have that not be equivalent to conversion out of forest land use. I think that's a topic we've talked about a fair amount, and that would be interesting to add to our topic list. Next is the comment that Gary made today, which I have summarized as post-fire small forest landowner management obligations and compliance, including assisting with reforestation, which I think I heard some support for in the meeting. So added that to the list.
The only thing I'd add on that is maybe we make that post-disturbance, or because in some ways it's not just fire that might push you into needing to know what to do afterwards. Because fire's one thing, but ice,
that sounds good.
There's like a whole list.
She's got it on there. I mean, it's on the last.
It's just the second part of that line, yeah. And then Gary mentioned urban growth boundaries and use rules and how those relate to forest management, conversion, and so forth. I hope I somewhat captured what Gary meant. We've talked quite a bit about outreach to as yet unengaged small forest landowners, which was a topic that we've talked about some and Rick mentioned today. I'm not quite sure, like, in terms of what we would do to have that be a productive agenda item. We've brainstormed about it a bit. Rick, do you have thoughts about a step forward in terms of our receiving information or providing information or making this an action item? What would be helpful in terms of making this a proactive and productive discussion?
That's a good question. I think kind of a checklist of who the players are and that we're regularly checking in, because it's not productive to be getting information from another organization when it's too late to do something. And so the more forward-leaning we can be on, what people are working on and what they're doing and where they need input. And then part of that is so that we can coordinate what SFO's input is, or try to coordinate that, because you can hear a lot of different things depending who you're talking to. So I think if there were something, Wendy, maybe that just had, what are all the different groups doing in the next year, and where can we help? That, because we can provide some focused, pretty instantaneous input and a cross section, which is kind of what we're supposed to do. But I think that would value add the work that the committee does, and also help all the little tentacles work better and not duplicate.
And Mike, do you think that that would be something that the department could put together as a kind of briefing or information that could be gathered? Or what do you think about that as an agenda topic which would land some work on you? I want to check first and see if you think that's feasible.
Yeah, I think it's doable. I got to think about who the players are, well, not the players, who contributes to that, because I think part of it might be part of our training group would be a part of that as well. So yeah, let me think about it. I think it is doable. I need to think about it a bit.
Perfect. And no need to have an immediate response. I'm just trying to do a little feasibility checking.
Yeah, Wendy, I think a good place to start would be the Partnership for Forestry Education. That group of logos, and Julie Woodward and Glenn and others are involved in that. And they have regular meetings, not often, but they have regular meetings. But some coordination on that, and it seems like it's the SFO could take a leadership role.
Yep.
But I think also, just to expand upon this, and I wrote this in my list here, is that I think the salient data point is that if there's 1,600 OSWA members and there's 70,000 potentially small forest landowners, I mean, that's less than 3% of those. And so how do you get, regardless of the organization, how do you get these people that obviously live out in the rural areas for some reason to become more informed, better citizens, and better stewards of their land, forest land? And the only way to really do that is to become involved in organizations like OSWA or Tree Farm or whatever. And so that, to me, that's the biggest nut to crack. And because as it goes to wildfire, it goes the whole bit, right? And so how do we help do that? And I think it would be worthwhile just to sit down and at some point and have a little round table where we talk to folks from OFRI, the Partnership for Forest Education, yada, yada, and just figure this out. Because I mean, our memberships are not really, they're growing some are declining, but they're not keeping up with the pace of the number of these folks that want to live on 5 acres and have a horse and a cow. So we need to somehow get the word out to these people, and I don't know how else to do it.
Thank you. That's good discussion of that bullet point. And then the last item I put here was based on today's discussion by Mauricio. As I said, then I think it would be very interesting myself to talk about what he was mentioning, sort of new value-added forest products and revenue streams, the example of Wallowa heartland biomass, and sort of going with that as a possible discussion of alternatives, and maybe even a focus on a particular case study like that, the biomass that Mauricio was talking about. So that's my final proposed bullet point. Comments on that? Mauricio, you want to say something more on that?
Yeah, and I just put something in the chat because I like to, going back to the last point, how do we tell the story of something different that could help with our forest and this concept of stewardship? There's been a very interesting movement of what is called the stewardship new economy. And Neil Christopherson, in the executive director of Wallowa Resources, was actually one of the founders of that Wallowa Heartland Biomass. So Wallowa Resources is the organization that made that happen. So these two are very much linked. And I think that, thank you for the reminder, 70,000 potential members of OSWA. And they may be looking for a model, a new story of living on the land in a different way, in a new way of rural economy. This concept of stewardship economy is very interesting, and I think the two are very much connected. This value-added forest product and a stewardship economy. So I would like, with permission, maybe to invite Neil Christopherson to present. Give us a short presentation. He's an incredibly successful person, and Wallowa Resources in northeast part of Oregon, but also in the region, has provided some incredible leadership and examples on many different fronts.
As a corollary to that, I think this would be fascinating. I'd love to listen to this, and maybe as another presentation or combined, We had a presentation at our CCFFA annual meeting from Northwest Hardwoods. And for those who aren't familiar with that organization, they did some amazing work out of the Portland airport, if you've been out there, and how they went, not just them, but working with the architect and whatnot, how they went to extraordinary levels to try to source local timber, unusual woods, alders, oaks, whatever, and to get them not only sourced but milled locally. And so, using the Portland airport as an example, you could see, you take something like the interesting stuff that's going down there at Wallowa and conjoin it with what can be done with markets that you normally associate, beyond Douglas fir, with all the wood that was done there at the Portland airport. So anyway, that's something I think it might be worthwhile.
Good thoughts, and I've added that to my notes on that topic.
Yeah, I think Kale is right. I get, there's not Northwest Hardwoods there. It's Sustainable Northwest. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, great. I didn't know if it might be a couple groups, but either way, I think it sounds like a great panel to have these folks all sort of talking together.
To show the diversity that we're just beyond just cutting Doug fir. I think that there's so much more value added there. And then also down the road to talk about other things that small forest landowners can do with their property, whether it's, truffling or whatever, I think that would point to the fact that there are other opportunities to generate some income.
And also, if I may, this is Maurizio again. I have friends on the Umatilla tribe and the Paiute tribe. I think that our 9 incorporated tribes in Oregon could really also add a very great traditional angle. I mean, they have been the stewards of this land for a long time, and they have been trying to very much like the forest, the forest that we love and we live in. They are committed to the land. They're not going away. Our tribes are here to stay, and they have been here to stay, much like our trees have been here to stay, committed to that piece of land. I think there is a great story and a great potential connections. Like First Foods with the Umatilla tribes. I can invite some of the people that I know, but I think that it would be very interesting for our audience, our next door neighbors, to really rediscover a potential relationship that will help all of us.
Is there a way, this feels like more than just a Committee for Family Forestlands conversation. I really like where all of this is headed, but it feels like it's such a rich discussion. And if you get all these folks to actually be together, is there a way that ODF could host like a workshop for small forest owners, and this could be part of it? Or, maybe this is the first of a couple different bigger discussions, or we could partner maybe with, don't want to put you on the spot, Rick, but it feels like if we organize that kind of a conversation that we might have a larger audience that would want to listen in.
Tree school, that's probably the biggest draw anywhere, and the one in Clackamas is the largest, and we get anywhere from 800 to 1,000 folks going to that, and it dwarfs basically anything else. So something like not just the one in Clackamas, but have a couple of them, and have them recorded. Something like that might be worthwhile.
Oh, can we do it like as an online? Because Tree School was online for a little while. David, would it be like if we recorded these as a video series or something like that they could host?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be my thought. And that's a great way to interact. We just started the Tree School planning process now for next year. I just started this week. So if that's something we want to entertain, I can float it, and see but I think it would probably be a well-received idea. But the other problem too, just to be honest, is that I've hosted a number of these kinds of things in the past, and the hardest part is to get the tribes engaged. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because they're so busy, they're understaffed, or whatever the reason is. But we've reached out to them on whether it is First Foods or for just their philosophy on how to steward forest land, but it's been hard to get them engaged. So hopefully we could overcome that.
Great discussion in terms of brainstorming ideas. That's the really fills out like that last bullet point here. And when we revisit that, we can certainly, I think this has been a good just brainstorming conversation, and we could follow up on sort of the bullet point as presented, maybe have a presentation from Niels Christofferson, I think was referenced, and then think about, what might work as next steps to try and come up with some kind of panel or presentation like Keola was talking about.
One thing I came up with, Gary and I were talking at the break. I don't know if we've had the urban and community forestry program. I think we had them on earlier, but what we were talking about was as the urban growth boundary expands, whether or not there's a need for specialized foresters within it'd be the urban community foresters is what it'd be. I mean, ODF we're just barely grew. Kind of wondering if there's a need for, we have our stewardship foresters and SFOs, but we're wondering if there's a need for a different kind of forester, kind of make that bridge the gap, I guess, between urban and rural forestry. I mean, it was just a thought we threw out there at the break. So.
Because that could be an interesting bridging the gap too between slightly larger small woodland properties and that sort of really the small ones, as Dave referenced earlier, you want to have a couple of acres and a few trees and a cow or whatever, or sheep or
chickens.
Those are also important, forested resources. So could be cool.
And just another suggestion, I'm just throwing that out there, is that during the pandemic, I put together for our Clackamas River Basin Council a series called Journey Down the Clackamas, and it lasted for 2 years. And what we did was what I wanted to do was create a 360-degree view of the Clackamas, from everything from geology to forestry to climate science, economics, the whole bit. And this has now garnered thousands of views across, from whoever. I mean, there was people from New York watching this stuff. And so, and we invited, first-class speakers to come in and talk and give their topics. And I'm wondering if something like that wouldn't also be helpful in addition to what we're talking about here. We could create, it was a thought-out plan. So we built the previous episode helped the subsequent one, like we had a couple on climate alone, and then we had some on 2 or 3 on geology. And so I think that might help some people that can't get out or just want more information, can't watch it, a particular time, but could watch it on their own time. And I think that really, there was a lot of benefit for that.
More thoughts? I think the next step would be then to work on refining this list and then adding what was just talked about now, and then having this kept by me and Mike and Heather and Miriam as an ongoing list to try and find speakers and put presentations together as we go forward. Probably reaching out to the committee as a whole occasionally to figure out how we'd like to do that. But if that sounds okay, I think those would be the next steps. Does that sound okay to the people in the room who would be involved in doing a lot of that work?
Sounds great. And I can help out however you like. I think it's important.
Okay.
Sounds like a good plan.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I think we can probably fit in 10 minutes of roundtable, and then do we have or more? But do people have topics of what's been going on recently they want to share with this group as a roundtable discussion?
I have a few things. This is Maurizio. Let me start with the Oregon Disaster Forum. So I would like to share with this group that the big fires of 2020 really engaged our different foundations led by my foundation, the Ford Family Foundation, in organizing something that has taken shape and is operational now. I'm going to put it in the chat. It's called the is called the Oregon Disaster Founders Forum. Before that, I mean, many foundations received a request. We need this, we need that during the fire, right after, as the emergency were happening. And we were trying to react and not respond. React, implies a very low-level organizational structure. So we decided to do something about this. So we started this organization that has a coordinator, has a website, has a system, a process, and we are not trying to sidestep the existing structure, but we're there. Philanthropy is there. There are 22 different funders involved with that, led by us and Roundhouse Foundation mostly, but many other ones with different functions. We put the money and the organization in one place, and we're able to actually wire money to a nonprofit organization in hours. So the no grant to be written. I mean, there is a process. It's on the website. I'm not going to bore you with the detail, but to activate the process, you need condition A, B, and C, and everything is done following incident commander authorities. We're not stepping in with money with other people already working, but it's nice for this committee to know that this exists. So anyway, that's one quick thing. Also, in addition to that, our foundation has something in addition to that internally, another little pile of money that we've been leveraging, helping the community. This is really for unmet need now, for disaster emergency, or unmet need that potentially they're not going to be met. I can give you some examples, but one thing that we continue to hear, that during the disasters, the communication infrastructure is very thin and very brittle. I mean, the transformer that I was in Wallowa talking to the chief, Gary, the chief of the Wallowa Fire Department, and they don't have communication half of the canyon that leads to the town of Wallowa. And so they're trying to put a repeater in one of the mountains there. So we assume that the communication exists, but it is not a very correct assumption. Verizon actually was very good and brought to Long Creek in Grant County a temporary cell tower for 3 weeks to allow communication in those communities to happen during the big 130, and some are still burning today in Monument. And so the communication is great, but it requires an infrastructure that supports that. And from the availability of good radios to the local volunteer fire department to other, and I start with radio or frequency or repeaters, that is something that needs to be addressed, and we're trying to do what we can. That's number one, communication. The second one I need to say is this: I have been involved to something called the Agri-Stress Line. I don't know if you guys are if you, I'm going to actually put another note in the chat. The Agri-Stress Line started because of ranchers, farmers, loggers, and fishermen have 3.5 or 4 times more probability of committing suicide than any other of the working people. And I that touches our community, especially our logging community, especially when we're shutting down mills. We're seeing that there are intense mental, physical, and stressful pressure on the people in our community. And please know that this exists. I'm going to be putting down a couple of things here in the chat and the phone number. But I was in Pendleton last night with Allison that worked for OSU, Oregon State University, and she has been leading this charge. But if you feel like you would like to be wanted, they were handing out bandanas yesterday at the roundup in Pendleton. So we were going to be handing out 10,000 of these bandanas to trying to support these very important issues. I mean, especially in as we mentioned before, when sawmills are closing down and families needs to make a quick decision on whether they relocate from the place in which they have been living for many years, there is an incredible amount of pressure for themselves, for the family, and for the community. One quick example. Mallard Lumber Company is being announcing the closure, 75 direct job and probably 100 indirect job. Talking to the superintendent in the school, there are 500 students in the whole county, K through 12. They're expecting to lose 100 of those students in a public school system. 25% loss of students in a public school system means that the following year in 2025, we may have to send home many teachers. So the ramification of economical connection to forestry, they're deep and wide. That's it. I'm done. Thank you guys for listening. And
Thank you so much, Maurizio. Dave?
Just three quick things. One is I'm on a committee through the tree farm with OFRI and OSU Extension and some government agencies to create a unified management plan. So the idea behind this is it makes it simpler for folks that want to be certified tree farms, that they can seek cost share assistance and other types of things from other organizations that require a certain amount of information in their management plan. And so, for example, ODF template may be a little different than NRCS, maybe a little different than what Tree Farm wants. And so the idea is to create a commonality here, makes it simpler for folks to create a management plan that's seamless between organizations to help optimize their opportunities. So that's the first thing. Second thing is our local CCFFA group, we went on a tour down at the Schroeder Tree Orchard that is run by ODF. Mike's aware of this. Now, I thought that was an outstanding tour. And if you folks haven't had a chance to do something like that, I would highly recommend it. Don Kazmarek, the forest geneticist there, is always willing and open to have folks come by, and extremely informative. And I think it will help going forward with some of the tree seedling issues that we're going to be facing in the future with climate change. The last thing is, on a good note, of course, it's all good, but we just completed our largest log placement project in the Clackamas River Basin. We had 350 logs placed over a distance of about 6 miles in 42 log jams. They're extremely large logs. They had to be lifted with Chinook helicopters over 5 log staging sites. So it was quite a complex project, but I was really excited with that. Nobody got killed, nobody got hurt, and a bunch of logs got put in, and hopefully the fish are going to be happy. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Leaving some space for roundtable comments if anyone has something. Rick.
Yeah, thanks. A quick update. The Umpqua Tree School is coming up, and that's an up and coming event. And if you haven't checked it out, there's a larger tree school web page. Just Google it, and then you can see the Umpqua. And so we have a number of folks participating, and I'm hoping that we can grow and expand that outreach in that corner. And they're having some success over in Northeast Oregon with the tree school there in Eastern Oregon. So that's good. We will be having our annual Family Forest Convention next year, June 19th, 20th, and 21. The Saturday will be the Tree Farmer of the Year at the Dalton family out in Kings Valley, and we'll be based in Corvallis. I'm going to be looking for ideas for the Friday program. And I think having a session on related to or with this committee would be very educational for the folks that attend. So I'd like to get that on the schedule and see how we can work in CFF. The other thing, which we've had for a little while, but we're newly revived, is that I have a grant to help support community-based tours. And the idea is to take family forest owners, feature their property, and invite other organizations and neighbors to come over and participate. So I can help buy lunch, pay for porta potties, those kinds of things to put on a social event. And we're really hoping that this year we can kind of get back in the groove of doing those outreach. And one of the things that we have found, instead of doing big mailings to these unengaged landowners, the idea is you partner with an existing community group and you invite them, whether it's the Watershed Council or the Native Plant Society or Society of American Foresters or whatever. And so it becomes kind of a partnership event. So we're going to be promoting that starting the first part of October and looking to get a nice distribution of events around the state to fire up the folks that are already involved and bring in some new faces. That's all I got. Thanks.
Okay, Wendy, I'll add my comments. And what I'd just like to say is what I'm seeing is we have a lot on our agendas to come to the future here. We have a lot of expectation of what we want to accomplish. And now we have to do it, period. Thank you.
A good comment. Yeah, a reminder of like I was saying, we want to both be fulfilling our role of advising and being a liaison between different peoples and make sure that what we talk about ends up having an impact and is connected to action. So thank you for that reminder. We've run through our agenda, and if I don't see any hands raised, I will just thank everyone for being here and call it a day, but I'll pause for a moment or two in case someone wants to say something.
Great job as usual. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
for a good meeting to ODF, and thank you, Wendy, for leading us.
All right. Thanks all. I close the
Have a good
meeting.
day.
Say
Bye-bye.
goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.